Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the ROI of engaging employees on sustainability. I'm Kathy Kunz, the Executive Director of Cool Choices, and I'm delighted you could join me today to have this conversation. Let me start with a little bit of background about Cool Choices, and then we'll leap into the conversation about ROI. I should note that I have a bit of a cold today, so it's possible that I'll have some coughing. I apologize in advance for that. Doing my best to control it. As a little bit of background for folks who aren't familiar with us, Cool Choices is a nonprofit. We work with businesses and communities to engage people in sustainable practices. Really, our quest is to help entities create cultures where sustainable practices are the new normal. And the primary way we do that is through an online platform. We've created a game-based platform that we customize for our partners, and then essentially people play a game. They sign up, they join a team, and they get points for the sustainable things they do. They can win prizes, they can trash talk each other. It's really all kinds of fun. And there are kind of two overarching things that are important to understand about our system. First, it's transparent, so people are seeing how sustainable other people are, which is enormously influential. And the game format facilitates conversation that really gets people talking about sustainability and collaborating with each other in a way that's pretty powerful. So as we implement these programs, we often talk to sustainability leads or green teams about the ROI of engaging employees. You know, what are the benefits of doing this? And so that's really our topic today. And calculating the ROI isn't new to any of you involved in sustainability. You're doing this all the time for technology-based projects. You're calculating ROI of a lighting replacement project or fleet replacements or installing photovoltaics. And so really we're talking about the same kind of a process here. One of the really important things to pay attention to, just as the case with a technology project, is that you're including all the benefits. If you're switching lights over to LED and they're going to last 2 or 3 times as long as the fluorescent lights you had previously, then you want to make sure that your benefits include reduced maintenance costs. If you're changing lighting so that people are more productive, that productivity should be in your calculation. We make exactly the same point about engaging employees. You want to make sure you're covering all of the benefits. So I thought it would be useful to use a very specific example today. And so we're going to talk about a scenario where your organization wants to reduce fleet idling. I'm somebody who's always noticing whose vehicles are idling out there in the world, and so you're delighting me. You're addressing fleet idling. When you think about ROI, there's sort of 2 pieces. There's the investment you make and then the return on that investment. So on the investment side, it's usually pretty easy to identify your costs. Those are the things you have to identify budget to pay for, sometimes get approval for. So you know, costs are pretty clear very often. For an anti-idling program, you might need some monitoring equipment so you know how much various fleet vehicles are being idled. Probably have some planning time with your green team to figure out how you're going to encourage this. Might be some communication materials. And because you've participated in other Cool Choices webinars and you know how important positive reinforcement is, you'll put some money into campaign prizes, whether those are just fun recognition things or whatever, but you'll recognize the people who are really succeeding on this for you. So those are your investments. And then let's think about all of the ways that you get a return on those investments. And fundamentally, what I want you to keep in your mind is the direct fuel savings, the gasoline, the diesel fuel that you save is really the tip of the iceberg. the part that's the easiest to calculate, but there are significant other savings here. One of the significant savings if you're running diesel vehicles, particularly newer diesel vehicles, is reduced maintenance. Modern diesel engines perform better when they're idled less. It's a pretty interesting phenomenon. So you start to have that maintenance thing. The next piece that you're going to see as an advantage is as you start communicating this, as you engage the bigger population of fleet drivers and say, we're on a quest to reduce our idling. We want to reduce our fuel consumption. These are our target goals associated with this. Part of what will naturally happen as part of that is it'll create some dialogue. People will talk about maybe specific cases where they're idling a lot. Are you aware that it's our protocol to do X? And it creates opportunities to talk about those protocols, to come up with new strategies for reducing that usage. So there's all kinds of idea generation that's sort of the first other thing. It's very plausible that in the course of having these conversations, you're going to identify a way that you reduce idling dramatically out the gate because you change the protocol for something, change how vehicles behave at particular warehouses or something. So there's that piece of additional savings and momentum. But there are a couple of other pieces tied to engagement and the human resources side of this that are really important to pay attention to too. So it turns out that the employees inside your organization are really hungry to be part of the sustainability solution. Data saying that 82% of millennials, 8 in 10, want to help their companies be more sustainable. That number across all populations is about 7 in 10. But it's particularly striking among millennials that they want this opportunity to help. So when you throw that engagement out there, you make your organization a more appealing place to work. And every organization needs to be appealing. So a really striking quote I saw last year in Fast Company, Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, talking about Facebook struggling to attract millennials because they want purpose-driven work. And when I read this, I thought, wow, if Facebook is struggling because people want to do something bigger in the world, how on earth does a company making widgets attract millennials? It's a really serious challenge. And part of the answer is by giving them purpose-driven work, by including them in your sustainability efforts. And by doing that sooner rather than later to mitigate turnover. Turnover is going to be this increasingly big issue as we move into a millennial market. This is data from Deloitte saying that 2 in 3 millennials expect to leave their jobs in the next 3 years. 2 in 3. So when you think about that, I mean, it's important to understand that there's a very real cost of turnover. Now, organizations estimate this differently. I've seen the Society of Human Resource Management says that on average it's half of an annual salary. Other estimates are a little bit lower. I used a slightly lower estimate of $10,000 for a $40,000 a year position. What that number represents is all of the ways that productivity is damaged. So when someone leaves, there might be work that doesn't get done. You might have to pay other people overtime to do that work. You've got the time lost in interviewing, in training the new person, all kinds of ways that you're less productive when there's turnover. So if engaging employees around sustainability can reduce turnover, that's really significant. The other thing it can do, of course, is make it easier to attract employees. And this is particularly important in industries like healthcare, where there's already a shortage of qualified personnel. I'm aware of a regional healthcare network in our area where the CEO brags about how the organization's strong commitment to sustainability enables them to recruit physicians and nurses away from other entities. Thinking about how are you interacting with HR to make sure that the benefits of the sustainability program are being touted and used to deliver these results. So let's kind of talk through all the ways that the anti-idling program has return on your investment. Okay, we had the fuel savings, we had reduced vehicle maintenance because those vehicles, or I'm assuming here they're diesel, reduces the maintenance. Employees are engaged in these things that yields higher employee satisfaction, reduced turnover. And then additionally, employee engagement correlates to more productivity, reduced safety, and even higher profitability. And there's really good Gallup data on this, looking at how organizations with high levels of employee engagement perform versus low levels of employee engagement. In most of your organizations, it's probably the case that someone in HR is tracking employee engagement and putting a value on it. So an increase in employee engagement in your organization is worth X thousand dollars a year. I can't encourage you strongly enough to make the connection with those HR staff and talk about monitoring how engaging folks around sustainability is improving engagement scores. Because if you can demonstrate that your efforts are increasing those engagement scores, that becomes a tremendous value to your organization. Additionally, you've got more innovation. You have people sharing ideas about how they're going to reduce idling, coming up with more creative ways to do things. And finally, you've got that stronger brand image with customers. You've got customers like me who notice whose vehicles are idling in the street and whose aren't. So you've got all of these advantages to accumulate as the ROI. And ultimately, with all of these advantages, what you're accumulating there is a culture. You know, we always like to go back to this quote from one of our past partners about what it means when you've got an entire employee population moving in the same direction. Everyone's thinking about how you reduce waste in your operations, coming up with creative ideas, doing their part day after day. It becomes really powerful and the benefits multiply in a variety of ways. I apologize for that coughter. We are, though, here at the end. I'm going to open things up for questions, give people a chance to ask me about any of this, and we can talk deeper. Terrific. And there's a question right away about, saying, our HR team doesn't seem to be aware of the advantages of sustainability. Are there specific materials you would send us to help educate them? It's a great question. There's a really good report from Cone Communications. Cone is C-O-N-E Communications. Sustainable Brands has had this in their materials they've promoted. I think they also did a workshop on it at one of their conferences, talking about particularly millennials and sustainability. That's pretty good. Certainly the Gallup studies are useful. So that's Gallup, the same Gallup that does the other poll work. Gallup measures employee engagement for some of the world's largest companies, and they do an annual report where they compare the performance of highly engaged workforces to less engaged workforces. So that one is a really useful piece too, just because it pulls out how much more profitable they are in some of those metrics. I would expect folks' HR teams to be well familiar with that. They may be less familiar with the pieces like the cone piece that really connects that to sustainability. And then a question about the kind of, so investors like to see hard numbers on ROI. Some of this feels softer. How do we position it in a way that it seems real? And I think I want to challenge you a little bit that I don't think the personnel numbers are necessarily softer. Most organizations track their turnover rates. If engaging employees around sustainability, making them feel good about the purpose-driven way their organization is operating, reduces turnover, that's really very clear math. Those numbers going from a 12% turnover to a 10% turnover is something that HR can quantify the benefits of inside your organization. Now, there aren't probably numbers that apply to everybody, but there are hard numbers within your organization, and it's really about, particularly when you're thinking about the ROI here, engaging your HR staff in the dialogue and really making this a collaborative conversation with them so that you can talk about the ROI. I'm not seeing more questions. Certainly you've got my email contact and you can reach out if you want to chat some more about this. We're always happy to chat more. Otherwise, though, I think we will call it a webinar today. As always, thanks so much for everything you're doing to make your organization more sustainable, and we wish you the best of luck with those efforts. And thanks for your time today. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.